Well, this is an odd one. Of Light and Darkness, TheProphecy is a 1998 point-and-click adventure game in the style of games like Myst or The Seventh Guest, where you click around a pre-rendered 3D environment and solve puzzles. But instead of a mysterious island or a schlocky haunted mansion, this time we have Dali-style surrealist hellscapes. But this is surrealism with a bit of a horror edge to it. We've got weird masks all over the place, a big creepy jack-in-the-box, and gameplay straight from hell, so I thought this was as good a game as any to cover for Halloween. This feels less like a review and more like an autopsy of some weird creature that got dragged out of a sewer grate. This game gets weird and artsy fast. I'm no stranger to weird games, but this one just has a vibe of nonsensical bullshit to it that sets it apart from the others, and can come off as pretentious at best and incomprehensible at worst. But like with any unidentified corpse, we're doing this for science more than anything. Well, this game has problems, and I'm gonna fucking get to those. It's still something that I think deserves to be seen. Maybe not played, but at least seen. I'm going to be breaking with tradition on this one and talking over the points of the game as I discovered them, since with the game being a point-and-click adventure game, there really isn't much to talk about gameplay-wise. You point and you click, that's it. Plus, in some way, maybe that'll make you feel like we're conducting this autopsy together. Like you're holding it down while I try and take a saw to the sternum. We've still got time for me to blue ball you a little bit though, so I thought I'd just take a look at this fucking box to start. This is one of those examples where saying they don't make them like they used to is actually true. Look at this shit. Even for 90s big box games, this fucker is chunky and has this awesome looking box art by the game's artist Jill Brevell that honestly wouldn't look out of place as album art for some kind of prog metal band where all the songs are 15 minutes long and have names like Axiom's Butter Knife or some shit. They do a man Jill dirty on the sticker though, with James Woods and Alita Davidovich getting the top billing. It's also one of those games with the front flap that serves no purpose other than to make storing the game awkward, since they have a tendency to swing open and get dog-eared over time. And listen to the absolute self-fellatio going on the back cover here. If game environments were paintings, these would sell for $10 million. I mean, the environments are very nice, but Jesus lads. We've got a confusing as hell map with whatever this reverse side is about, an unused sticker in surprisingly good condition, a 3 CD jewel case, and this chode of a game manual full of a bunch of written lore, which I'll get back to once we start getting into the game proper. There's also this mail-in slip where you can order a copy of Gilles' book for a special offer of $35 for buying the game. I actually loaded this up on original hardware as well, just to justify owning a legacy system, but for the ease of recording and just generally being a nicer way to play, the gameplay you'll be seeing is from the Steam copy, since the GOG copy seems to have issues with my system. But I will admit that playing it on a shitty CRT does add a certain element to it that's missing otherwise. So we boot up the game and get a splash screen, but a theme song happens?
I had a dream I was lost in a dream world, an obscene world without apparel, buck-naked Scrooge in a Christmas carol. Ghosts from the past and future danced the hoochie coochie. From Roxbury to Frisco, it was Mondo Apocalypse.
This goes on for like 2 minutes. The fuck kind of genre is this? We then get transported to one of the more interesting main menu screens I've seen, where this robot sits in a sound booth and talks to you.
What can I do for you?
I can look around and select things, but I'm not exactly sure what free tour is. But for now, I'll just go with new game.
Good luck.
Hear ye, hear ye. As provided in ancient law pertaining to, but not exclusive to man, and that which is not man, the vessel of resolution having been duly chosen, these proceedings do hereby duly convene at the appointed hour of the millennium. All persons bearing witness to the subsequent proceedings shall agree to hold in confidence certain probable transpirations, to wit, the end of the world, paradise, hell on earth, heaven on earth, and a pestilence. Raise your right hand. Thus do I swear.
Thus do we swear.
All rise. Hail Magister.
Hail Magister.
I'm skipping this for now, but I think I understood about 2% of what anyone was saying, and that's after finishing the game. You can also click on the speakers to listen to the theme song again, or get a clip from a radio show where the hosts are talking about a Vegas stripper prophet.
Favorite among the devotees of exotic entertainment here on the Vegas Strip. Zandy, you ever catch her act?
It's still an act, Mad.
Other than the speakers, the only other thing you can click on in this room is the base of the Jack in the Box, which will play a video.
Attention! Find this room. Apparitions are arriving. This concludes our informational message.
I'll be honest, I bought a copy of the game off eBay based solely on its box art and the general weirdness of it all. I like this kind of stuff, specifically the kind of surrealism where the focus is on architecture. Something about looking at paintings where an environment is designed to be as alien as possible and trying to figure out what it might be for is appealing. So this opening is great. I have no idea what the fuck is going on, but I still want to see more of it. As you wander around, you'll find these objects scattered all over the map, which are these black pyramids and red, green and blue orbs. At this point I had no idea what any of this stuff was for, but I've played adventure games before, and stealing everything that isn't nailed down is usually a good strategy. You won't have much time to think about it though, because the game will grab the camera from you and twist your head round to look at a cutscene. And we get our first taste of the talent they must have paid a fair amount for.
I'm alive.
More than ever.
Where is this place?
It could be heaven.
Or hell?
Only if you make it so.
Yeah, somehow this weird surrealist adventure game managed to land James Woods. He plays Gar Hobb, the game's antagonist and also the Dark Lord of the 7th Millennium. Which is weird because this game came out in '98 and James Woods had already come off the back of playing another Dark Lord. Angel Gemini, the woman in the cutscene, is also played by Lolita Davidovich, who is an actor I wasn't familiar with before doing this video, but she's also been in a fair bit over the years and does a good job. The voice acting in general is just really well done, which is just as well because you're going to be hearing a lot of it. If you turn around, you'll see this big globe thing which the game calls a clock, and I fucking hate the way this guy says apparition. I know I just praised the voice acting, but it sounds like he's smacking his lips right next to my ear.
To hear the apparition's victim, select the apparition's artifact in inventory and left-click on the clock from here.
Okay, but what is an apparition? Where do I find one? Also, this thing's a clock apparently? Calling it a clock makes sense later, but for the first hour or two of trying to figure out this game, I was convinced that there was an actual clock with numbers and a face somewhere. I mean, there is an actual clock, but it's not very helpful. I end up walking down the street before ending up in this strange looking theatre where two people are yelling over each other.
All bow to me, Lord High.
Queen of her domain.
If I so choose, I can
Slaughter those who oppose me, or
I can be merciful to my
underlings.
will
You
be
have
grateful
1
for
minute to
my
send an
gadgets
apparition back to the
and
Dark
sympathy.
Isle with white light. If you do not, the apocalypse will soon be upon you.
Wait, hang on, what? So yeah, apparently this game has a timer of about 20 minutes before the world ends. So we can add that to the list of arsehole moves that 90s games like to pull that are in this one. I tried this a couple of times and I can't find an apparition fast enough. And at this point I have no idea what white light is or how to use it.
Bailiff, the post-mortem, please.
There is still much you need to learn. The answers are all around you. Listen and learn, practice orb combinations, use the portals. Be sure to
Get your head out of your...
Mr. Hobb, zip it.
Sorry, Your Honor.
I'm calling a brief recess while the world experiences the catastrophe. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves or with others.
Fuck off, you just chucked me into the Salvador Dali carnival with no idea of what I was doing, 2 seconds of actual instruction, and expected me just to get on with it? This is like the first day of every job I've ever had. So yeah, I guess we should check the manual. So this manual is extensive to say the least, and gives you a lore dump to hopefully explain what's going on. The warnings of Nostradamus, Edgar Cayce, and the Book of Revelation suddenly seemed everywhere. Predictions of global apocalyptic changes scheduled to take place at the turn of the new millennium, visions of drastic landmass shifts, violent changes in weather patterns, an end to life as we know it, famine, plague, and war. Of Light and Darkness, the prophecy takes its inspiration from the end-time stories concerning the coming millennium, awakening in a village somewhere between heaven and hell. You are the chosen one, thrust into a climactic battle between the forces of light and darkness. The clock of judgment is counting down to the end. Apparitions guilty of the 7 deadly sins herald the coming of the Antichrist, Armageddon, and the end of paradise. So, this game is a bit of a Y2K time capsule, built on the fear of the millennium and the impending apocalypse. At least according to the people that wanted to sell you t-shirts and survival kits for a low price of $49.99. So in this game, the Y2K bug is going to do a lot more than fuck with some spreadsheets, and is instead going to bring about the end of the world proper. This game was released in '98 and is very much interested in any batshit theory you could think of in terms of the millennium. The back of the game box actually tells you to visit the game's websites for millennium predictions. Yeah, we've got time. Unsurprisingly, all the websites here are long dead, but fortunately you can find them on the Wayback Machine. This website is horrible to navigate, by the way, with the symbols here, but eventually I did find a free Winamp skin which looks sick as hell. Fuck, I wish I could still download it. When are they going to bring back Winamp skins? I really want to dress up my media player with the ugliest looking late 90s or early 2000s colour scheme. You know, the ones with the weird bulbous edges? I want to stare at an audio visualizer while I listen to, I don't know, Sneaker Pimps or something? The predictions the box mentions are actually just these website links. One tab is just a link to the Art Bell website, the famous radio presenter. Another links to the Center for Millennial Studies at Boston University, which appears to have been a center for studying the social impact of Y2K and the history of apocalypse predictions. Another tab links to the Year 2000 website, which is essentially an info hub for anything about Y2K. I was hoping this would be one of those sites with message boards full of preppers, but it's actually just a lot of info about preparing businesses for the date change and making sure infrastructure's okay. I was actually a little disappointed as I was hoping for some balls to the wall Kool-Aid chugging level shit, but most of the pages seem to be pretty tame. That was until I clicked on the Earth Ascending webpage. Hell yeah, I want to calculate my Maya galactic signature. Reading this page is like reading Naked Lunch after it's been passed through Google Translate a couple of hundred times. I dissolve in order to enchant, releasing receptivity. I seal the output of timelessness with the spectral tone of liberation. I am guided by my own power doubled. I am a galactic activation portal. Wait, how the hell did we get here? Oh right, the adventure game with James Woods in it. The manual says that you need to redeem apparitions in order to reach the end of the level. I didn't see any on my first run since I was too busy pissing about and just generally being confused. I eventually did find some in this room with the checkered floor. Clicking on them doesn't tell me much though.
I am the Messiah!
I'll have who I please.
There are items in the middle here, but I can't grab them, so I end up wandering around for a while before I find this room with an elevator in it. Taking the elevator down just causes these two people to start yelling at each other.
Kill you.
I'll castrate you,
Get you.
But this...
Nobody makes me look
foolish, I'll see you.
In hell.
Revenge is sweet.
The death of
my enemy
justifies all.
Loser.
Whore.
You'll be sorry.
I'll dance on your grave.
You are less than nothing.
I end up wandering around some more, but eventually the world just ends again, and I'm still none the wiser about what it is that I'm actually supposed to be doing. So I'm gonna have to go back to the manual again. I need more help. I'm gonna condense what was a painful few hours of reading and rereading the manual and checking online, but this is basically what you have to do. When a game starts, it'll tell you to find a randomly selected room called a device room. The screen will also flash a colour when it does this, which is a bit of an early tip-off. And the flash means that for the current attempt, this room is going to be the first room to have artifacts and apparitions spawn in it. The device room is usually some kind of bizarre looking representation of a global catastrophe, like war, plague, famine, or whatever. And you can find them on this fucked up looking map that comes with the game. Each symbol corresponds to a portal. When you enter a room, there'll usually be one of these things in it that you can pick up, and it'll be represented in your inventory by an icon. The icon corresponds to one of the icons on the map. If you select and use it, then you'll instantly be teleported to that room, but the portal will be dropped in the room you teleported out of, so you'll have to go back and get it if you want to teleport to that room again. This becomes useful later on when you press for time and need to get around the map quickly, but if you're like me, you'll ignore them for the first 3 hours and manually walk everywhere, because the symbols confuse the fuck out of you and you can't be asked to tab out to read the manual. Or, God forbid, crane my neck a few centimeters to read the one on the desk right next to me. Artifacts are the random items you find in these rooms that you can pick up. But you have to be quick in getting to the room, because eventually the apparitions those artifacts belong to will also spawn in. And if the Elder Scrolls taught me anything, it's that you have to wait for someone to leave the room before you try and rob them. You can do this by banishing them with white light, which you can make if you have a red, green and blue orb and combine them. Orbs are scattered around the map, and there's a set number of them that are placed randomly at the start of the game. Using them will cause the orb to disappear from your inventory and reappear back where you found it, until you pick it up again. Using white light will banish the apparitions and reset the clock. Oh right, the clock. So the big round climbing frame looking thing in the centre of town is a clock that counts down through several colour stars. I think the order is random, though I'm not completely sure. As soon as the screen flashes with a colour, that means that some artifacts have spawned somewhere in a device room on the map, and you need to go and find it before the apparitions appear. Or if they have already appeared, use the white light on them to banish them, and then return to the clock since you know exactly where they spawn once the clock reaches that colour. You can then click on the colour on the clock to move time forwards on purpose, but be careful because the more you move time forward, the closer you are to having the world end, which will kill your run. Once you've nicked the artifacts, the apparitions that own them will start following you around town and asking for their shit back, and blocking you from heading down certain paths until you either banish them or give them the items back. This is about as far as I got on my own without consulting the internet. I ended up just wandering around randomly, flashing different colour orbs at apparitions like I'm at some kind of illegal rave. It turns out that you need to find the mask room, which is behind this big mask near the theatre from before, which I missed because I thought it was just set dressing like the other masks in the room. But to be fair, the camera does frame up on it exactly when you enter the room, and you can see your cursor change when you mouse over it. So admittedly, I just wasn't paying attention. That one's on me. Part of the reason I haven't played that many adventure games is because, by my own admission, I'm a fucking idiot that regularly misses the obvious. Even in the easier ones, I'll usually find something that'll stump me for a good while before looking it up and finding out that it wasn't even a puzzle and I was just looking in the wrong place. Anyway, the mask room shows you all the masks that are assigned to each colour. The colour that a mask is applied to changes each time you start a new game, so there isn't any way to cheese the game by looking up which mask goes with what. Then what you have to do is click on the mask in the room and listen to the biography of the person it represents, which you can also find a more in-depth copy of in the manual. A lot of these masks are made up for the game and are supposed to represent a notable person from a specific point in history that is guilty of one of the deadly sins. But a few of them are actually based on real people. To name a few, you've got Caligula, Alexander the Great, Aleister Crowley, Marie Antoinette, and confusingly John Wayne Gacy, the infamous serial killer and serial rapist. This one stands out because, unlike the majority of the other masks, this one is using a man whose crimes took place in the mid to late 70s and was still in the public consciousness. Gacy himself wouldn't be executed until 1994, 4 years before this game came out. And relations to the victims were still very much alive, and I'd imagine a few of them still are now. This wouldn't feel in such poor taste if the game was actually trying to say anything, but it's not. It's used to make this joke when you redeem him that's not even that funny.
John Wayne Gacy, sinner of anger, is redeemed.
So ordered. Mr. Gacy, you've already been executed, so there's not much more we can do to you.
I know it's too late to help those children, but I can help destroy this hob who guided my evil hands.
Mr. Gacy, it's come to my attention that you've already begun advertising yourself as Exposo, the magic birthday clown.
Guys gotta make a living.
Bailiff.
Commencing molecular deconstruction.
Wow. Pity. One of the greats.
Thank you, Bailiff. Proceed.
Oof. This isn't the only one that's like this. I'm not against a game using people and topics like this if it has something to say, but this game really isn't saying much of anything, and is at best slightly pretentious, and at worst so far up its own arse that it can see the back of its teeth, while it makes these weird jokes that don't really land half the time.
Marie Antoinette, the spendthrift, is redeemed.
So let it be noted. I find that the defendant's beheading was sufficient punishment. But how do you feel about the millions of starving and thirsty children today, Marie?
Let them drink Coke.
I'm in love.
Alright, the shitty orb puzzle. Once you know the mask of the apparition you want to redeem and the colour it belongs to, you need to read through their entry in the manual, listen to what their artifact says to you before you pick it up, and then take it to the big clock to listen to one of the victims of the apparition slag them off. Then you have to decide what sin they're guilty of based on all that information. Take the item to the appropriate room themed after said sin, and combine the artifact with the colour the mask belongs to redeem them. I hope you remembered your colour wheel from secondary school art, because some masks belong to colours like cyan and purple, so you'll have to mix more than one type of orb to make a colour. As the manual points out, them committing a crime isn't a sin. It's the motivation behind the crime that you need to figure out. So someone can murder, but they could murder out of anger, envy, greed, or because someone dared to say that the final season of parts wasn't that bad. You'd be forgiven for thinking that this is a good idea for a puzzle game, where you have to play detective and piece together information and testimony to reach a verdict, but what it boils down to is stealing the shit, go to the mask room, read a Wikipedia entry, go to the sin room, and use the orbs. I should also mention that this is the only puzzle in the game aside from a shitty riddle right at the end, and the game has 3 levels, so you have to do this 18 times in the first level, an extra 21 in the second level since they bring in the black orbs, as well as another 21 in the third level because this resets every time you finish one. There are 31 possible apparitions, so the chance is that you're going to have to redeem the same apparitions multiple times and hear the exact same voice lines each time you do. To put it bluntly, this is shit. It's a really shit idea for a game, and an even shittier idea to repeat that shit idea, so it just becomes an echo chamber of shit. These levels aren't short either, with the amount of walking around you have to do and going back to check if you have the right matchup of an object and colour. Eventually I just started using a walkthrough around the 3rd level to find the right combination of sin and artifact, because I was just getting sick of doing the same thing. And once you've figured out and written down the sin and person related to that object, the game isn't even a puzzle game anymore, and instead turns into you going to the mask room to see what colour the mask is now. So you can't even say that the mask's changing colour makes the puzzle any harder, since you already know the answer. You just have to do the busy work of checking the mask room to see what colour it belongs to this time, which just feels like a job and not a puzzle. The game also recycles the map, which is part of its other gimmick. In level 1 there are a number of passages and doors that you can't walk through, and if you try to you'll get this message.
Not this level.
The crops were spoiled.
In level 2 though, some of the doors will change to have a lock symbol on them when you mouse over it, and clicking it will cause it to ask you for a specific item. These items aren't anything new, they're just the artifacts that the apparitions have, only this time you have to use them to open a door before you try and use it to redeem an apparition. They might follow you around and give you grief by blocking you from getting to places, but orbs are so easy to find in this game that I don't think I was ever without enough to make white light, so I could easily fuck off whatever was stopping me from moving to the next area. The game fixes that though by introducing Dark Lords in the last level, when you should now be able to fully access all of the rooms in the map. The Dark Lords are apparitions that can actually get back at you for stealing their artifacts in a few ways. They'll let you know when they're nearby with a sound, and you then have a few seconds to move or teleport to a new area before they find you. If they catch you, they'll take their artifact off you and either steal all of your orbs or your portal locations. But they can also curse you if you get unlucky, which means you can't pick up or use anything until you cure it with the right orb colour in the right location, which is random every time. While this should make the game more challenging, it only really serves to be a nuisance, because this comes at the end of doing several hours of the same shitty orb puzzle. And by this point, if you're like me, you're just saving every 5 minutes so you don't have to repeat anything. So you can save scum if you fuck up and pick up the artifact before you were supposed to. What you end up having to do is redeem all apparitions besides the 3 Dark Lords and get to them last, and even then only do them one at a time, since they need to be redeemed in the last area of the game, which I'll cover in the spoiler section. 90% of this game is spent doing this puzzle over and over again. The other 10% is walking around. By all accounts, this is not a good puzzle game. It's boring, repetitive to the point of parody, and not even that hard to figure out once you know what you're doing. Then it just becomes a Guess Who game. The problem is that while the gameplay in this game is complete shit, the presentation and the overall vibe is really good, to the point where the only reason to play the game is to look at the nice surrealism. If you can hear that grunting in the background, that's just the sound of Gilles Brevel and the design team carrying this entire fucking game. Gilles is an interesting guy. The man is a full-on artist first, doing massive installations and commissioned art pieces for price points that make me break into a sweat just looking at them. And he's been doing art generally for about 40 years, probably longer. And you can definitely see his style in the game, which is probably helped by the fact that Gilles himself was credited as the 3D artist. It'll depend on whether surrealism is your thing, obviously, but to me these environments are really nice, even if I know that I'm just looking at pre-rendered videos. If anything, the crunchy FMVs actually add to the tone a little, although they do look a hell of a lot worse on a modern flat screen. I'm not a person with a vested interest in art criticism or the academic side of art. I am literally just talking out my arse. The most experience I've ever had with any kind of fine art is looking in the Tate Modern, and that's only because it's about the only thing to do in London that's free. But something about this style is just cool, and putting it in a 3D form and letting me walk around it is even better. It's just unfortunate that it's tied to gameplay that makes you want to do practically anything else. The game world makes a kind of weird sense after a while. Since all the rooms are either representations of a sin, like a theatre for pride or a bank vault for greed, and I'm not actually sure I can even show the Lust room on YouTube. There are also the device rooms, which I looked at earlier, and the fact that they're all connected in this circus village that looks like a Moulin Rouge fever dream just adds to the atmosphere. I'm not sure what that atmosphere is, but it's a cool one. Gilles' still active now, though he's moved into doing more modern looking sculptures and decor pieces, which are still nice, even though I'm not entirely sure how I feel about the NFTs he's selling or the 20 grand emoji sculpture he made. It's actually quite hard to find anything about this game nowadays, and even Gilles himself doesn't seem to mention working on it much, besides this PBS interview where he mentions it in passing. What is interesting though is this one interview from back in the day, where he mentions that he got asked to do the project because Brian Fargo, Fallout's exec producer and the founder of Interplay, was collecting artwork at the time and found some of his 3D stuff in a magazine. It's actually quite hard to find anything that was said about this game before or since. All the reviews on Metacritic 404 when you try and read the full articles, and there's a few more on Moby Games. I tried looking for a scan of the August 98 issue of PC Gamer where this review comes from, but it doesn't look like anyone scanned it. What I did find though were these two fucking glorious time capsules. In the May 1998 issue of PC Gamer, there is a 2-page spread for the game, which I'd imagine would have been some pretty expensive ad space. The ad itself isn't that interesting, but what is interesting is that this is the same issue that also contained a BDSM-themed ad for the game Death Trap Dungeon, and this ad for Ultimate Race Pro, where they just drove over a copy of Need for Speed 2 with the tagline, "Everything else is roadkill." A game that is now abandonware, I think, while Need for Speed went on to have, a few games over the years. I respect the balls on it though. The game would also take out another ad in the December 1997 edition of PC Gamer that would employ the often used 90s marketing tactic of, if we get them while they're horny, we won't actually have to tell them what the game is about. What I find funny though is that this is back before widespread internet, and by extension internet porn was easy to access. And you might not want to actively go to a corner shop and have to interact with the cashier, who knows exactly what you're doing with that copy of Beaver Hunt. You can't just say it's for research. So somewhere, someone has cranked it to the site of a Surrealist painting. I will put money on that. Music. Well, there isn't actually that much of it to talk about, besides the credits theme, which I think is actually pretty sick. I'm going to use that to play us out though, so hang around for that. Other than that, there's the intro music, which you've heard. I don't even know what to make of it. Is this even a genre? It's creative, but it sort of feels like it was ad-libbed, and has this really chaotic sound to it, which is fitting for a game about the end of the world, I guess. The music you'll be hearing most, though, are the tracks that play while you walk around the village, and they're mostly forgettable-sounding ambient drones with some world-type percussion and the odd vocal thrown in. It's not bad, but it does sound like it came off of Fallout's cutting room floor sometimes. Though I'll take a forgettable theme that you hear 100 times over a repeating earworm that drives you nuts. The game's general sound design and voice acting is also good, although there are some issues that stand out. A lot of the voices can have some really obvious peaking in them, and the pause game noise, which is also the same noise that plays when you teleport, is mixed louder than any other sound in the game, which really fucks with me. The game's composer is Ken Melville, who did music for a number of games, but was most notably the story writer for It Came From the Desert, which is a game I've actually heard of before. The game's director also worked as a designer on that game, as well as working on the CDI game Girls Club and the video game adaptation of the Hulk Hogan show Thunder in Paradise. Confusingly, he's also credited as having been the co-writer for the 1970 hit Green-Eyed Lady by Sugarloaf. What the fuck?
The Chosen One is coming for you. Your powers are weakening.
Oh, you can be such an idiot! Nothing can touch me here!
Here? It's just a state of mind, Gar.
The game's story isn't really much to write home about. It's presented in a way that's very artsy and gives you the illusion that it's about something more than it actually is, but really it's a pretty standard Chosen One plot with the story jumbled about a bit, to the point where I'm not 100% that I've got everything in the right order, since the way the game chooses to update you on the story is really messy and difficult to follow. I'm also just generally kind of stupid, so that could be a contributing factor. I'll give you a spoiler warning as usual, but I'll be honest, the game really isn't worth suffering through for the story. About the only thing the game has going for it is its art style, and you can see that by playing the game in free mode for about an hour. But if you really, really want to, stop watching now. But don't say I didn't warn you. I don't want to hear any fucking shit from people that bought this thing and said I didn't warn them. It's your fault, man. Don't look at me. The MFers, yeah, that's what the game calls them. The starting area is also called Studio MFer. Anyway, they need you to redeem the apparitions of sinners to prevent Garhab from bringing about the end of the world at the turn of the millennium. Who the main character is isn't really mentioned at all, only that you're the chosen one and you've been picked to try and stop the apocalypse. At this same time, Garhab has also brought a Vegas stripper from Earth to act as some kind of vessel that's needed for the apocalypse to happen. Angel Gemini was supposedly a stripper that began having prophetic visions and was drawing large crowds until she shot her lover on stage and woke up in the Dark Isle. As you complete levels, the game will randomly play scenes of the two talking to each other and arguing about humanity and its place in the grand scheme of things. Some of which comes off like something a 12-year-old would write after visiting r/atheism and reading the Wikipedia entry for nihilism. Annoyingly though, you might remember that the game has a timer that's constantly ticking down, even in these cutscenes, so it makes it really hard not to skip them when you press for time. This is the game's only way of giving you story bits as well, and for the most part, they really don't tell you anything at all and can sometimes repeat in each level. The routine becomes, you walk around completing the same boring ass puzzle, Gar and Angel Skype call you to argue some more, and then fuck off for a bit, only to come back and do the same thing later. I'm not actually sure what triggers these either. There doesn't seem to be any one particular thing that I've done that could cause them, they just happen. The only thing that is revealed is that the man who Angel shot on stage was her lover, who somehow warned her that Gar was coming. Gar spends the entire game grilling Angel to try and find out what his name is, which she can't remember, up until the very last moment where she reveals that the man's name was Jumbled, which freaks Gar out. This part I'm still not sure about. Is it some kind of Jesus stand-in or something? We never see or hear from Jumbled either, so I really don't know what his role was. For a while I thought that Gar was trying to find out the player's name, but no, he's seemingly only interested in the name of the man that Angel shot. I suppose the player could be Jumbled, but as far as I saw, the game never makes any attempt to imply that you are. And seems to reiterate that despite the fact that you're called the Chosen One, you're really only here as a formality, hence the courtroom you hear at the start of the game. This is a deity's equivalent of giving a fair trial. Once you redeem all the apparitions in the second level, the game will tell you to go to the Hall of Mirrors where all the redeemed apparitions hang out, and this will happen.
I see you have redeemed all the apparitions. Bailiff?
You will now place the correct orbs in their respective receptacles.
Yeah, what you gotta do, see, you gotta stick your orbs on this device here.
Okay, Wireheads, here's the order.
Then you gotta go green, red, then come back.
Left to right.
Right to left, I got it right here. Look,
Left to
green,
right, Strife?
What are you going?
You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I always interrupt me, man. You always know everything.
Hey, hold it. Okay, dig it. It's from left to right. It's green, blue, and red.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Fire in the hole.
No, shit, man. Go for it.
Hey. F, huh? F, right.
It doesn't matter what you do. Whatever order you put the orbs in, Gar will switch them round and release the Dark Lord's Wrath, Spendthrift, and Miser.
You see, it doesn't matter what you do. I've changed the order. Now let's just see how clever you really are. Welcome, Dark Lords. Join me in the Dark Isle. I long for the sweet corruption of your sins.
If it please the Magister, new evidence has come to light, as it were.
Proceed, Bailiff.
The Chosen One has done well.
Well done.
But has failed the orb test in the mirror.
Well, the law allows a certain correction to be administered in these matters. A second chance, if you will.
There was a miscue of sorts. The MFers...
A screw-up is more like it. Any further miscues, and I shall find the people in default and fine for Mr. Hobb in this matter. Will you convey that to these MFers, Bailiff?
Of course, Magister.
Mr. Hobb, it's your move. Let the record show you will do your worst.
My pleasure, Magister.
I've already talked about how annoying these fuckers are, so let's fast forward through about 3 hours of doing the same puzzle, to where we finally redeemed all the apparitions for the 3rd time, but left the Dark Lord ones for last. Clicking the Dark Lord's artifacts will give you clues as to the actual order that the orbs need to go in. This puzzle is pretty lame, as it's literally just collecting clues from all 3 artifacts that say things like red is next to blue, and blue is not next to green. This is the kind of puzzle that's only slightly above a maze on the back of a children's menu, or one of those shitty slide puzzles you get in a cracker. Once you've opened a way to the Dark Isle though, you now have a way to redeem the Dark Lord apparitions, which previously couldn't be redeemed in the normal map. You have to take their artifact to this room behind the mirror and redeem them, but unlike the other apparitions, since these fuckers can steal your shit, the minute you take their artifact they will be gunning for you, and you have to get to the Dark Isle before they catch you and fleece you for all you're worth. This is not an exact science. You can't just run for it, as they'll find you as soon as you get to the entrance of the mirror room. What you have to do is head in the opposite direction, where they'll sometimes come after you and sometimes not. And you have to wait until you hear them getting closer before quickly spamming the teleport to the mirror room and sprinting through the Dark Isle. I'm not sure it's a good idea to run up a spiral staircase like that. Once you've redeemed all 3, which takes a while because these guys really don't want to be redeemed, the door will open to Gar's chamber, where he and Angel seem to have merged together, and you'll be faced with the last puzzle of the game, which is the exact same fucking guess the orb puzzle from before. Only this time they added black orbs, so it's marginally harder. If you clicked on the redeemed Dark Lord apparitions before you went in here, then they'll give you clues as to the order that the orbs need to go in, which you can use along with the clue that Angel gives you. If you didn't, then I hope you saved, because you've just got the bad ending.
It has begun! My 1,000-year reign of darkness, come! Come, sweet angel!
Our time together is finished.
He'll destroy you!
I need to know. After that, we'll have to.
A shooting rampage that left dozens dead and dying all over the plaza.
Another rocket attack against the Palestinians, which invited massive retaliation and...
Millions will starve in North Korea in a few months if the government continues to refuse...
Riots and looting spreading throughout greater Los Angeles and moving into the...
Jumbled. I am returned.
If you don't fuck up, then Gar and Angel are separated and confront each other with some of the worst audio peaking I think I've ever heard in a game.
And not chariots of light nor darkness shall carry the day, but each to fair measure resolved.
I was human, weak. It was agony. I won't go back.
You never left. You came into this life in human flesh. The dark voices of your spirit are nothing if they are not part human. And the earth you so despise is home to you still.
I wanted to become much greater than just...
Please, take my hand. Let our light and darkness...
Jumbled. Never, ever.
Thank you, Mr. Hobb. That wasn't so hard, was it? Bailiff, the post-mortem.
Thank you, Majesty. The first step is achieved. The fate of the 7th millennium is decided. For the moment.
Bailiff will now read the name of the next Dark Lord to succeed our Mr. Hobb here.
If it please the tribunal, the next Dark Lord is to be William G.
Wait. What?
Don't be naive, Angel. I'm human. Powerless. He's out there somewhere. No telling what he's capable of. You're on your own, kid. The struggle is just beginning.
From what I understand, the game pulls the rug from under you by saying, yeah, you might have stopped the apocalypse this time, but give it another 1,000 years and you better be ready to do more shitty orb puzzles. At the end of the day, you're just a formality for the justice system of higher beings to decide the fate of the world. This would almost be a good ending if it didn't come at the end of several hours of suffering. But what's more is that they give you this little extra scene that I'm just going to let play in its entirety, because it might just be one of the strangest ways I've ever seen of ending a game.
We have touchdown on Europa. White House, tell the president we're ready for the...
Jake, this is the president. We're all real proud of you boys and your mission. Please begin the ceremony.
Thank you, sir. And now, on behalf of all peoples,
we claim this planet and rename it Republic in honor of our great party that through all its fiscal efforts and against all odds
Hey, what the hell is that?
cut the feed. God damn it! I said...
Cutting feed on my mark. 3, 2, 1.
We're jammed. Somebody kill the mains. Jake,
Son
what
of
the...
a bitch, that's a goddamn...
Just cut the... We are experiencing a malfunction in the feed from Europa Probe. We now return you to our regularly scheduled...
So, from what I can gather, a lunar lander named after Carl Sagan plants a Windows 95 flag on a moon, and some weird Harlequin-looking thing smashes it up. I did actually find a YouTube comment that seems to sum up what the scene is about, but that doesn't make it any less bizarre. While it's compressed all to fuck, the planet in the background looks like Jupiter, so presumably this is 1,000 years in the future, and at the turn of the next millennium, where humanity is spread out into the solar system and has reached Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, which you can hear mentioned at the end. The guy that looks like Juggalo Rob Zombie with a goatee is presumably the next Dark Lord who's shown up to mess things up. That being said, what the fuck? Of Light and Darkness isn't good. It lures you in with the cool art and the promise of there being something deeper going on, but there isn't. It's highly possible that I misunderstood the plot or got bits wrong, but that's the problem when you try and tell a story while also side-eyeing me and tapping your watch. I could forgive this game if it had regular adventure game puzzles, where you linearly progress through the map to get to the Dark Isle. They wouldn't even have to be good puzzles. I'd be perfectly happy with something bog standard if it meant looking at the game's environments didn't also require me to do busy work. You could even keep the timer you love so much if it makes you happy. Just extend it to something reasonable and not 20 minutes. The only reason I wanted to cover this game was admittedly to justify my eBay drunk purchase, based on the box art alone, but also because it's such a strange oddity to have this surrealist game with a big name actor at the height of their career and all this ad space that shit the bed so drastically but also so quietly. There really isn't much out there about this game, and what there is was either lost to time or only a word or two still exist here and there. This game feels like a cryptid, like I'm gonna wake up soon and none of it will have been real. Honestly, it's not surprising that this would fall into obscurity, though not so obscure as to not get a Steam or a GOG release. I do feel like it needs to be seen, but from a distance. Like some kind of dangerous exotic animal, the best way to view it is behind glass, because it will bite you and force you to collect orbs for it.
Your body don't makes you a wreck. You can't select your underwear, and you stare at your abductors when they hook you up to electrical conductors and they pull the switch. Hey man likes a bitch, and this ain't Oswell. This could be Roswell. Party on the ranch. Party on the ranch. Party on the ranch. Party. We are not the enemy. This is the anti-infomercial without deceit or rehearsal. You can't be on a needle or a cracker jet to get this message from the brothers of Alpha. Not even meant, cause we say.
I've just woke up in a fucking steaming mood, yeah? Cause I live in a shithole! Do you know what I mean? Birmingham is a fucking shithole! I hate the fucking place! I fucking hate it! It's full of dickheads! I fucking hate it!